All right, we'd like to welcome each and every individual to Voices of Integrity with Young Men. So today we're going to try to learn something, crack the code to young men that I have not cracked in 40 years. And that is, how do you help? How do you help? So there's an accounting firm out in the East or West Coast in California. I talked to him and we went over, and the guy at HR, they have 18 employees. And he's like, we have personality differences. There's having issues, and they're not sure if they want to get rid of if they have to get rid of the person, or whatever. So in my experience, the analytic and amiable, super arrogant. The amiable is very arrogant about, you need to treat people a certain way. Well, which way is that? Well, it's the way that I think you ought to treat them. Like, okay. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's crazy. It's crazy to me. You can have 20, 30, 40 years more experience than the amiable, and the amiable still, it's born into them that they know what they're doing. And the analytic, it's like they're blind to the future. They cannot see the future. They just can't. They cannot. Oh, they're stuck in the micro details and the little tiny things. They cannot see. They are blind to it. But it doesn't matter how many times they're wrong. It's like they can't remember when they're wrong. They can't remember when they're off. And it's like so I'm looking and searching for the answer. Anybody have it? Anybody have any suggestions?
I don't have the answer, though, but I followed this week now and looking for it too.
I'm sorry, you're looking for it too?
Looking for that answer.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I think it's just confusing. It's like people don't like your life is the way it is because of how you think.
Yipper. Yipper.
And if you like your life how it is, well, then that's okay, and it won't change. Don't expect it to change ever.
Right. Right. And the thing that's weird is people look and say, man, and they're like, well, it's a pretty good life. It's like, well, is it? And how much of it is that's good is, either God's grace or, somebody else cleaning up messes or doing whatever. See, it's interesting because people don't see the little, it's weird. Like the analytic, they do not see the little things that are significant. They just see a bunch of little things that are insignificant. Like they niggle. It's actually a word. It's like there was once, I'm sure Jason remembers this. There was once that we were moving, and it's weird because the Amish young man, he thinks, it's funny because we were over at Kenny's and Alicia and I, we were walking back and Jason was talking about converting, gas to, propane to gas or whatever it was. And she said, man, those Amish guys, man, they're smart. And I kind of laughed and I said, well, On some things they are, on other things not so much. And I'm like, oh, sorry, did I say that out loud? She said, I heard it. And it's like, and so we were moving once. And so it's like we were in Illinois in the one of the suburbs, and there's this massive, biggest truck you could rent for moving. And this thing was packed from the ceiling to the floor, from the top to the back. I mean, it was just solid stuff. And I had a birthday and they celebrated the birthday. My birthday with an ice cream cake. and 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 we had some left over. And being a Boersma, you can't waste anything. You can't waste an ice cream cake. You can't waste it. Like, you gotta. So what I did is I went ahead and said, well, I'm gonna pack this ice cream cake. Everybody starts laughing, and 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 then one of the people, they thought they were smarter than I was. Like, it'll never survive. You can't move it 2.5 hours, an ice cream cake in a truck, in a moving truck. And I had properly assessed everything, the weather and all the different elements. And I said to the individual, I said, okay, let's make a bet. I'll bet you. And my bet was, if I won, that person never questioned me again, which is weird. You think about that. Why would I do that? Because I can see
the future.
Yeah, I can see the future. This individual just thinks they're so smart. They just think they got it figured out. They think they got it. And it's like, so I make the bet, we make the bet. It's flawless. Like, there's not, the cake leaves there, but the individual doesn't follow through on the bet. And I don't bet. I don't wager. Did that time because I was hoping, I'm like, I hope they remember. So with a lot of young men, you just got to take them down hard. You just take them down hard. See, the flaw, the weakness of these two dudes over here, and I'm not saying these dudes over here might not have it too. I mean, I've never met a driver that has that issue. I'm not saying they're not out there. I'm just saying I haven't ever met it. They think because I'm 60 years old, well, I was just like them. No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. Man, I learned lessons at 20 because I had identity, because, I realized when I was 8 years old, my creator said to me, Mark, you're average to below average. Creators never talk to them. It seems like to me, it seems like creators never talked to them and said, hey, you're average or below average. So they never had that come to Jesus conversation and saying, hey, you're not that good. So here's a great podcast here, Identity. And, so these two podcasts here, so I think part of identity, I mean, it's becoming who you're created to be. The only thing worse than thinking you're really smart, like, and like, I'm really smart. I'm smarter than everybody else. I can see things. And, and you explain things to people and they still don't get it. Like, they just don't. They just get locked. They just get locked. And it's like, oh, and then I thought, I'm like, well, if they blow up, if there's enough things that blow up enough times.
Hey, do your report. I want to help you structure it differently so we're going to push out.
Well, fortunately, Luke doesn't have this problem, and so I thought, if things blow up in their face enough, they'll learn, but they don't. They just don't. So here's the here's the,
I think in their mind, they're still not, it didn't blow up. It
no,
did blow up, but it was somebody else's fault. It was
you're
always
right.
something else happened.
You're right.
Nothing I could do about it.
You're absolutely right. It's either, I mean, it goes back to the 9Ds. It goes back to the 9Ds, and it's like, holy cow. And so, if one of those guys is listening to this now, why don't succeed? If they're listening to this, like they're tuning it out. They're not, well, this doesn't apply to me. It's like, and so we spend all this time trying to go ahead and, trying to figure out. So on this here, the worldview, like it's like their worldview is self. It's all about themselves. I mean, not not fixing themselves, because they're the ones, they got it together. They got this, and they'll crash and burn, and then they're right back. It's like they don't learn. There's nothing to retain it. So distract, divide, defer, deflect, defend, defensive, deny, destroy, deceive, disguise equals defeat and depression. Passion, purpose, plan, potentiality, positivity, persistence, perspective equals prosperity. It's like, so I don't know. I was hoping you guys would go ahead and have the answer to it. I don't know. So, Jason, any thoughts you have? Oh, here's one of the things. Here's their weakness. Here's their, like Superman, he has kryptonite. Here's their weakness. Their weakness is their ego. So what you do is they want to look good. They want to look good in front of people. They hate, man, they hate looking bad. That's their weakness. So you just create case study after case study after case study after case study. You do podcast after podcast and exploit and say, this is what's going to happen in the future. I don't know that it'll work, but hopefully it will teach other young men, do not fall into this trap. It's not a matter of if you're going down, there's a high statistical probability your business is going to fail sometime, somewhere, no matter, I mean, shoot, even if you have something that you have 90%, 95% retention, even an accounting company where the IRS does, the heavy lifting for you. They often make it a heavy lift too for you. But it's like, why can't they see that? It's their ego. So you go ahead and just expose them. Expose them. Man, do they hate you though. Boy, do they. And what they'll do is they'll find other people. They'll find other people just like themselves, victims. They'll find other people, and then they'll gang up on with those people against you. What they don't realize is, they don't have a chance. There can be 100 of them, because the truth will set you free. They're enslaved. So they'll find other people who are victims, self-righteous and entitled, and they'll be drawn to them like magnets. Like, forgive the language, but this is for young men, right? So it's like a bunch of shit, horse shit out there with flies. And they're like a fly, and they're drawn to the horse shit like flies. Just kind of how they are. Jason, any thoughts?
No.
Okay. Kenny, Luke, Melvin.
What is so attractive about horse shit?
It's how flies get their.
Flies don't see it as horse shit.
No, they see it as food. Yipper. Like, it's interesting because in the Bible, they talk about a dog returning to its vomit. And finally, I mean, I'd seen that since I was growing up. And finally, at a year or 2 years ago, I went ahead and said, I wonder what the math is, wonder what the science is behind that. And so the science behind it, they say there's two theories on why a dog eats its vomit. One theory is that there's nutrition in there that they need. It doesn't sound like a very good theory, a very good theory, but that's one of the theories. So that scientists, all these smart experts, the ones that are so smart, like, well, I'm a smart scientist, like I can really figure stuff out. You really think you do? You can't even figure out why a dog returns to its vomit. And so the other theory is that, which I kind of think is more the case, is that the dog knows that a predator, so it's instinctive, like a wolf. If a wolf smells the vomit of a dog, the wolf knows that the dog is sick. So the vomit, the vomit reveals the weakness of the dog, and so the dog's vulnerable. The dog's vulnerable. They just are. And so what they do is they eat it because they think, they eat it because they think that that covers it up. So they know they're weak. They know they lack confidence. They know they're gaming the system. They know they're selfish. They know all these things, but it's at a subconscious level, the young man who's like this. So so they return to their vomit. And so so great case study. We can come back later to it. The thing that I don't want to do is I don't want to force young men to do things. I want them to, like, I don't want to do it through brute force, because at some point there's a leverage shift. And so they'll have bitterness. They'll hold up and say, this person, Mark's picking on me. He's doing this and this. It's like, I'm doing it for your own good, for crying out loud. And so great example. And, they'll say, well, you explain it to me. If you can explain it to me, it's like, but I've already taught them. Why don't you do something and then figure out the good of doing it? And so, but they can't do that. They just won't. It's like, it's not even in their mind to do something that they don't want to do. And they're locked. And this is the thing. So they get locked in it. And I don't know, probably there's bitterness, maybe from childhood or something. I don't know. And so what they do is they'll go ahead and sabotage it. They want to be right. Being right is more important than being successful. For them, everything. It's their identity surrounds being right. So here's a case study. We can come back and look at it later. And so there's a accounting dashboard. And so if somebody who's part of the core, like, why couldn't they process this on their own? I mean, if they were as smart as they thought they were, they could have processed this. If they've learned from the past lessons, then they could have. And so what's the benefits to doing it? Well, one benefit is you're helping other people. Well, I don't want to do that. I mean, like I don't want to do that. I mean, other people help me. I'm okay with other people helping me, but I don't want to help other people. Okay. Good strategy. But there's far more than that. So if it was an accounting, you're not going to get any accounting software out there. You're not going to get any accounting software out there ever that's going to be built for Amish. You just won't. So the Amish is going to cost more money. It's going to cost more money to go ahead and service the Amish. Just will. It's going to cost more money. So it's going to be harder to maintain the profit margins that you want to maintain. So when you go ahead and don't hit the profit margins that you want to maintain, what are you going to do? Are you going to go ahead and connect it back and say, if I was just using that software, then I'd be hitting my profit? No, you won't. Why? Because you just won't. You see that in politics today. So there's customization. Was there a question? So there's customization that you can do in custom software. You can customize it specifically to go ahead and you do things. There's not any software out there that goes ahead and teaches your servicing, your tax providers how to go ahead and communicate with these different personalities. It's going to have that. It's going to have that. It's going to have the where, and there's not any software out there anywhere that's going to go ahead and that's going to go ahead and look to upsell stuff based on personalities and based on questions. There's just not. And so what we do is we go ahead and think, well, so there's now I could come up with all of the arguments. See, the person thinks Mark's not listening to me. Well, you're not even telling me. But I can go ahead. I could list all of the advantage. Well, I don't want to have duplicate time. I don't want to have, I don't want to have that. I've got a bunch of other things going. I've got this and this and this. And so I could come up with probably all the reasons. So it's not that I'm not listening to them. They're not listening to me. It's not that I'm not trusting them. It's that they don't have the experience. They don't have the data. They don't have they don't have the experience. And when I explain to them, one, it takes a lot more time, my time. And if they think they're busy, they ain't seen nothing yet. They ain't seen nothing yet. And when they go ahead and get in over their head, are they going to say, if I'd have just listened in the past? Probably not. It's like it's not wired in them. And so it's going to go ahead and help with efficiency and making sure you can pick up, drop off, you can do all of those things. So it's going to be, you can't get this with other software. You just can't because it's not customized. You're going to go ahead and be able to sell more. So the holy grail in accounting, the holy grail, there's two of them in it. And this person doesn't know what they are. I mean, if I ask, they'll probably say, I'm not sure. If I go ahead and when I say it, but they're going to switch, they're going to do a mind shift. And they're going to say, well, I knew that. Why didn't you say it? So, so the two holy grails are going to be employees, and so it can build in their, help coach them, help them to see different things about themselves that they don't see, not just personalities, but a whole bunch of other things. And then it's connected into a whole bunch of other stuff. And then so one is employees and getting them, keeping them, making them productive, and helping them not to be like that person themselves. Like, okay. And then the other holy grail is how do you keep people busy during the off season? So the 3 months, 3.5 months, you have taxes. Well, what about the other, 9 months, 8.5 months? That can be twice as profitable, 3 times as profitable as the tax, because the tax is really mostly pretty much a commodity. And so there's no software that's cracked the code on that. None out there. And how do you go ahead and ask the questions? How do you take the questions, the challenges, the problems? How do you go ahead and find out the needs? How do you go ahead and take that, blend that in with the personalities, and have that all come out? And if somebody's thinking, well, I can do it with their software, it's like, nah. You want to put a bet on it? you want to wager on that thing? Like, how confident are you in your position? That's the other thing. They're very confident in their position, but they're not. So hopefully this was a good podcast, and It's interesting.